Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Mexico, your next food export destination. My name is Karin Verbree. I'm the manager of Holland House Mexico, and I will be your moderator today. In 2020, Holland House Mexico published a study into opportunities for Dutch companies in Mexico's food retail industry. Today, we will be presenting an addendum to the study, as due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many things have changed and opportunities have catalyzed. Having a look at the program, we will start with a presentation by Erik Plezier on the EU-MX Global Agreement and the information that is relevant to you. Next, we will hear from Florencia Cantu, coordinator of Holland House Agri-Food and Horticulture, introducing the findings of our addendum to the study called Mexico, Market and Trends. And finally, we will hear from Daniel Reitsma on the impact of COVID-19 on the food and beverage business. There's been a slight change in the program for today, as Dan is, for logistical reasons in some other place, so he will be starting today. Other than that, we will go as planned. And before we continue, I'd like to tell you quickly a little bit about Holland House. So we are the Bilateral Chamber of Commerce, Mexico-Netherlands. We are a privately-owned, non-profit, independent organization, and we were established in February 2019. Prior to that, there was an initiative only for the energy and maritime industry in Mexico, and that was called the Dutch Energy Association. We are part of a worldwide network of NL and business hubs, so you may be familiar with some of the other Holland houses around Latin America. And we work together closely with them in order to help Dutch businesses become more successful on the Mexican markets, and also to promote trade, investment, and sustainable business development between our two countries. So how do we do this? We have a little drawing that explains a little bit the relation between our network, our community, which is our member base, and business development. And we add to that some soft landing services to help our companies be successful in the market. So two of those I really wanted to highlight, the Holland House community, which are members. So we create networking opportunities for members, we facilitate business development, and we do a lot of promotion of company products, services, and company brands. And particularly for the companies that are still in the Netherlands, it's interesting to hear about our services that can help you expand your business in Mexico. So in-house, we have services, including market research, matchmaking programs, and also local representation. And then there are several services that we can help with through our esteemed partners. And that has to do everything with legal matters, translations, payrolling, etc., etc. I'll be happy to elaborate on that on a more personal note. One of the reasons we are here today is because we are preparing for a food roadshow in 2023, and this is scheduled more or less around May. We don't have the final dates just yet, but the objectives are to become familiar with Mexico's retail and food service markets and to take the first steps on the markets. And we are planning to schedule a one-week program in Mexico City and Guadalajara, where we will be visiting the #1 food retail expo in Latin America, Antas and Alimentaria. This year we are hosting the first Dutch pavilion there, so next year will be the second. And visiting the fair will be part of the program. And that's why we don't know the exact dates, because it's not been announced just yet. We will also be including store and factory visits and a personalized matchmaking agenda to help you get started on the Mexican market. And as I just explained, Holland House Mexico offers a range of services to help you also really cash in on these opportunities. So for follow-up efforts, we will also be available. We're planning on preparatory roundtable sessions in person in June 2022, or perhaps the last days of May. I will be in the Netherlands for that. So yeah, if you are interested, then make sure to keep an eye on our media and see when this will be hosted. If you'd like to have more information on the roadshow and the activities leading up to that, then also please contact us at any point. So without further ado, I would like now to give to Dan Reitsma from Notice Mexico, and he will speak about his experience and 20 years in Mexico. Dan?
Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. And a minor correction. It's 19 years and counting. So next year it's going to be my 20 years in Mexico, but close enough. Hello everybody. I'll give a short introduction about myself and about my company in Mexico and the things that we're doing, and some learnings and experiences over the years here in Mexico, and then there's some time for questions. My name is then Reitsma. I'm 50 years old, and I've been living and working for 25 years outside of the Netherlands. And actually, that was never the plan. When I was in university, at the time it was very popular to study abroad or to have international experience, and I had no interest whatsoever in doing that. I was fine in Netherlands, and I even thought, why should I learn a lot of English because I want to live in the Netherlands. But you realize that when you're young, you don't know exactly what's going to happen in your life. I had to do an internship in doing my studies. I couldn't find one in Rotterdam where I lived, and the only option available was in the UK, in London. And I thought, well, I really want to go there, and then but there's nothing else to do. So I said, okay, it's going to be for 1 year. So I decided to go, and that was my exit out of the Netherlands, and I've been back for 2 years since that time. That was in 1994. So that's how things go, and it's been a very exciting and challenging journey so far. And still continue. I studied business administration in Erasmus University in the Netherlands, and I've been working for about 10 years for international companies, Glaxo, pharmaceuticals, and Friesland Campina dairy, in international positions. Before I started my own business in the Netherlands, sorry, in Mexico. In fact, I did start a business in the Netherlands for about 2 years. It was an IT company back in the .com time, but I realized that the whole IT and the internet was not my thing, and I'm happiest within the food industry. So I came back and this is my kind of thing. I'm also co-founder and board member of the Holland House Mexico. In fact, I've been involved with the Dutch Chamber of Commerce since 2010 in Mexico. All my expertise is in international food business. I've always had international jobs dealing with distribution, new markets, new products, new concepts, and that is where all my expertise is. When I don't work, I like to do sports. I'm into trail running in the mountains, off-roading in my Jeep, and generally I like to explore. I live in Guadalajara most of the time, but also have a place in Mexico City. The picture you can see my family of 4 humans and 3 of the 4 non-human family members, 4 dogs, all street dogs that we rescued, and they are the greatest animals to have around. Next, Karen. So Notice is a company that I started in 2009, and the name means a network node. It was a general name back in the time in Mexico. You could not choose exactly your own company name. You had to give a list of 10 names, and then they would decide for you which name it would turn out to be. So I had actually some names that I liked more, but this was probably name number 6 or 7 on the list, and it's fine because it's a name that is very general, and that's what we are. We are a node in a food system, in a food chain. We do different kinds of things: import and export. We export food products from Mexico, such as frozen meat, eggs, chicken, mainly to Africa and Asia. Years ago, we did also Russia, but Russian market has been closed way before the boycott of after the Crimea annexation. So that's long ago. We also do export of pet products from Mexico to the USA, and we're starting to do pet products from Mexico to into Europe. We do some imports from mainly from Nicaragua, meat products, and products we import from the USA. And in Mexico, we do distribution to large retailers. We cover the convenience channel and traditional trade. In our network, we represent some foreign companies. The largest one is Friesland Campina, where we've been involved with and for the last 7 years in Mexico, and basically we manage the cheese business for them in Mexico. We have some projects with meatless vegetable meat going. If you see on the map on the right, you see a bit of our network, our international network. Even though we're a small company, we have about 15 persons in Mexico. We are part of a big global network of similar companies that have met over the years in trade shows and through our contacts, and we can actually offer products and services in almost any country in the world, all through this network of interrelated companies that we form this network with. I have an office in Mexico City and in Guadalajara, from where we manage the Mexican market. See a little bit of our customers on the right side. All the big retailers in Mexico are there. Next one. Well, for the people who are not familiar with Mexico, let me just say that Mexico is very different from the Netherlands. You probably knew that, but I'll tell you exactly how different. Mexico is a huge country. It is 47 times bigger than the Netherlands. There's a huge border with the US compared to the Netherlands, where the largest road you can take is 300 kilometers. It is also a very diverse country: deserts, mountains, volcanoes, jungles, oceans, Caribbean seas, compared to Netherlands, which is relatively the same in terms of landscape. Mexico is an extremely diverse country because of its size. You have a lot of different cultures. Mexico is mostly a mix of indigenous and Spanish cultures, but they still speak about 68 different languages in the country. So imagine how rich and how what a great variety there is between Mexico. You're going to say this is Mexico. Mexico is a lot of different cultures and sort of people and regions. Compared to the Netherlands, where relatively people are similar. There's a few more or less different dialects, and only about 80% of the land is based on immigrants. If you look at education level, Mexico is extremely also diverse there. You have extremely well-educated people, but a large part of the population is pretty poorly educated. 53% of rural population has not even finished secondary school. First, the Netherlands, which is an extremely high educated country, 80% of adults have above second grade education, and almost everybody speaks English. About income and wealth distribution, luckily we know that Mexico is much poorer in general than the Netherlands. But Mexico has also a very wealthy and high-earning part of the population. That's about 10%, but they control about 42% of the income of the whole country. So these are that's a very prosperous part of Mexico, but there's also a very poor part of Mexico where the 10% of poor people only have 1.3% of the total income. In fact, the Netherlands is not so different on the high end. Where 10% the Dutch own about 60% of all wealth. But the medium and the medium segment is much wealthier than compared to Mexico. And obviously, in Netherlands you don't have the large poor part of the population. So Mexico is different from the Netherlands. I will give you two practical examples of what kind of things you can see or what you can experience in Mexico. Things that are practical. In my experience, what always strikes me is that some problems in Mexico which shouldn't be a problem are huge issues, and other problems which are almost impossible, you think, to solve, can be solved pretty easily. The first one is an example of something that should be go very straightforward and doesn't. And that is a tax audit that I got I think 2014-15. We imported some meat, and we got a big claim of about 4 million pesos, $200,000, because of errors made with imports according to the tax authorities. After 1.5 years of working with lawyers and tax consultants, finally, thanks to free assistance from Protocol, which in fact is a government body that is set up to help you, to protect you against the government. So the same government has an agency that protects you against the same government. To go through the bureaucracy, and they can make sure that you have the meetings with the right persons. But in the end, it all came down to that I had to prove that the beef meat that we imported from Nicaragua was in fact made from domestic cattle and not from wild animals. And I can say, well, everybody knows that beef meat comes from a factory and is made from beef, which is domestic cattle. But that was questioned, and I had to go through the Ministry of the Secretary of Environment and Natural Resources, and they had to give a document. You can't read it, but it's right there, where they said that beef is made from cows, which are domestic species and not a wild animal. And then it was solved. Crazy, but it worked. On the other hand, something that seemed to be impossible became actually very simple possible, and that was when I started to export meat products from Mexico to Africa. And normally the process works that you have to. There were no agreements between Mexico and African countries, so we couldn't get any health certificates, so no exports possible. The normal route was to send a request to the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Mexico. They pass it on to Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs looks for the closest embassy or trade representation. They go to the agricultural authorities in the country of destiny, and that's how the communication goes back and forth. Through the Dutch embassy, I had a meeting with the head of one of the directors of agriculture in Mexico, and we were talking about some African countries, and they said, no, we already did it. You don't have to do it because it's done. Then we sent a request to export, define the regulations between Mexico and Angola in this case, back in 2006. I was talking to them in 2010, so 4 years later. I said, and how is it going? I said, well, we're still waiting for an answer. So 4 years and nothing happened. I would make an agreement with the Mexican Ministry of Agriculture that we could actually take the same letters, documentation, straight to Angola through our importers, went to the Ministry of Agriculture in Angola. And within a couple of weeks, we had the agreement signed between both government bodies, and that was actually amazing that government let us participate in bilateral relationships and actually shortcut the process. That way, we did like 16 countries in Africa that are now available for export into for Mexican companies. Just 2 examples. Mexico, in my experience, is seemingly endless opportunities. It is a large, diversified economy. It is deficient in many products, staples, dairy, grains, beans. Mexican consumers like imported products. They like the quality. It is well seen to have imported products. Mexican consumers are very innovative. They like to try new things. So it's an ideal ground at a glance for foreign companies to explore and sell their goods and services. But at the same time, Mexico is a very, very competitive market. It is because of its size, all the large players in the world are present here. Everybody is competing here. And the market, the main market, 80% of the Mexicans who don't have the large amount of income are very price sensitive. So the premium segment is limited and very demanding, and the rest of the market is extremely competitive and price sensitive. Something to take into consideration when you look at how to enter the Mexican market. Carl, I think we can skip this one because this is coming as part of Florencia's presentation. I want to go through some learnings I want to share with you about doing business in Mexico. On the left hand, some things to watch out for. Mexico is a very riskful business and also has a riskful non-business environment. So think about bureaucracy, corruption, but also risky in terms of the regulations. It's a very good legal framework, but the lawyers, judges, everybody is part of the Mexican system. So you have to watch out very carefully who you deal with, and if you how to stay out of trouble, and if you're in trouble, how to get out of trouble. And I'm not mentioning the personal and safety issues that Mexico is going through for the last 10 years, that are also impacting your business. In fact, I read an article in The Economist just this weekend explaining why Mexico is growing so slowly, stable, but with a small growth, where Mexico has all the potential to grow like 10% per year. And they explained that a lot of companies don't want to grow. Companies are afraid to grow here because of a few reasons. One is they're afraid of crime, of the narcos demanding money from them if they become visible. They're afraid of the government, of the tax authorities, and afraid of the labor unions. So companies are actually afraid to grow. So it is a challenging environment to operate here in Mexico. Culture trap. It is a very different culture from the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we are very fact-based, contract-based. We trust each other and quickly go into, okay, let's work together, let's go to a contract. In Mexico, that is not the case. In Mexico, you have to build a relationship first. And after you have a relationship, you can think about a contract. A contract, in a lot of cases, is seen as distrust. Why do you want a contract? Because you don't trust me. So it's a very different cultural setting to work with, and you have to go for trust and confidence with the person first. Another thing that we Dutch are very proud of and works very well in the Netherlands is our polar model, where we always reach agreement and we always come to a compromise. In Mexico, it doesn't work like that. That companies are very autocratically organized. The boss decides and everybody follows what the boss says. So compromises are not usually done here. It is go for everything, or it will be nothing. The middle is usually not a reachable part. And then the approach of the language, and not just Spanish language, but the Mexican language, to understand how Mexicans work, be local. If you don't work with locals or think like locals, it is very difficult because the country works in a certain way. But on the other hand, there is some how you can benefit from the fact that the Dutch have a very trusted image. The Netherlands has a trusted image, but also the Dutch are well seen, and that opens easily doors for you in Mexico because of the good reputation we have. Also, a lot of people want to work with you because we are very fair and decent employers. So a lot of people will be very happy to work with us because we treat them people relatively very nice compared to how they are treated in other companies. It is a huge market with lots of business opportunities. Wherever you go, you can find opportunities. It is really an area of and a time of opportunity in Mexico. Another benefit, great benefit I see, is the proximity to the USA. All Mexican infrastructure is built with focus on the USA and on the northern neighbors. So the factories work, the processes work, and that is something that not especially countries in the south of America don't have so much. So very interesting here. Thank you for your time and attention. I can throw over for questions if you have time, or maybe do it later. Up to you, Karen and Florencia.
Thank you very much, Dan. I understand that you have to leave us very soon. So if there are any specific questions for Dan, this would be the time. You can put all of your questions in the chat box of this Zoom session. And otherwise, some of the other speakers of today will try to answer any of your doubts and comments.
Yes, and you can also always send me an email or contact me through the Holland House and talk offline. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dan. So moving on, for some years now, there's been work on the modernization of the EU-Mexico Free Trade Agreement. And with us today is Erik Plezier, Agricultural Counselor of our embassy here in Mexico City. Erik, the words to you, please.
Thank you very much, Karin. Yes, my name is Erik Plezier. I'm Agricultural Counselor at the embassy here in Mexico. And together with my team, my two colleagues who are also present today, Benjamin and Frank, we facilitate trade and cooperation between Mexico and the Netherlands in the agri-food sector. We support Dutch businesses in this sector in their market orientation, their market access, their market entry. We provide support in their dealings with the Mexican authorities. And we position the Netherlands as a valuable partner for Mexico and a global reference in sustainable and circular agriculture. If we go to the next slide, please, Karen. So today I'll tell you a bit more about the new trade agreement between the EU and Mexico, for which both parties agreed on a draft text in 2018, so already 4 years ago. I'll tell you a bit more about what this agreement means for the export of European food products to Mexico, and I'll also share some trade statistics for food exports from the Netherlands and from the EU to Mexico. So if we go to the next slide, for some background about this trade agreement. First of all, as Karen mentioned, it's actually the modernization of an existing agreement. And it's also part, this trade agreement, of a broader agreement called the Global Agreement, which will not only define the trade relations between Mexico and the EU for the years to come, but also the political relations and cooperation between Mexico and the European Union. So the first, or the current agreement, which is still in place and was signed in 1997 and came into force in 2000, needed some modernization. And now, why did it need this modernization? A couple of reasons. The scope of the current agreement is still quite limited. For example, there's still a lot of import duties on food and agricultural and fisheries products, especially from the EU to Mexico. So not so much from Mexico to the EU. Also, the current agreement does not include many services and investments. And services and investment have become more important these days in our economies. And also, there were quite a few so-called non-tariff barriers in the ongoing or in the current agreements. And what are non-tariff barriers? Well, some of you will know these are mostly standards, import requirements, also divergence between international SPS, so sanitary and phytosanitary or ISO standards, and the Mexican standards. So that makes it difficult to export your products if there's this difference in standards. Or there were problems with intellectual property of EU companies in Mexico. Not all the safety tests or EU certifications were recognized in Mexico. So all these non-tariff barriers will be solved in the new global agreement. If we go to the next slide, we see some key features of this new agreement. I think the most important is the one on top of the list, the removal of import duties or tariffs. 99% of products traded between the EU and Mexico will be duty-free under the new agreement. Also, public procurement, maybe not so important for today's audience, but European companies will get the same treatment when it comes to public procurement as Mexican companies. When it comes to procurement by the Mexican government, including at state level. Also, there are services, there will be opening of trade and services in the New Deal. What kind of services you think about? So these are financial services, transport services, e-commerce, telecommunications, online trade. So they will all be included, or they are all included in this new agreement. And there will be simpler customs procedures, so transparent import approval procedures with clear timeframes to speed up paperwork and physical checks at the border. There's a specific chapter on sustainable development with agreements on labor, safety, environmental, and consumer protection standards. There's commitments that Mexico and the European Union have already made under the Paris Climate Agreement. So they're all included in this and reaffirmed in this new global agreement between Mexico and the EU. There's also provisions, specific provisions for the protection of intellectual property by European companies in Mexico. And there's investment protection through the new investment court system. And this is a new system compared to the old style system where investors could challenge the states. In this new agreement, the states will have more opportunities to regulate in the public interest. It's also the first agreement of its kind. There's a couple of items that are not in any other of the European trade agreements. First of all, it contains specific provisions on tackling corruptions. In the agreement, both the EU and Mexico have committed to make bribery a criminal offense for government officials. There will be strengthening of internal controls, external auditing, financial reporting. There's provisions on money laundering. So this is the first time that this is explicitly mentioned in an agreement like this. There's also a specific working group on animal welfare, which recognizes that animals are sentient beings. Now, why is this important? In a lot of trade agreements, European consumers are afraid that meat products from other countries, in this case Mexico, will enter the EU that have been produced under lower animal welfare standards than that we're used to in the EU, or that are actually legally compulsory in the EU. So with this working group in animal welfare and with the specific recognition that animals are sentient beings, the idea is that this will not happen. And also, it's the first agreement where civil society has an actual role in monitoring the agreement. Now, we're not there yet. And to be honest, the hurdles for the actual implementation of this agreement or the final ratification are on the European side, not so much on the Mexican side. As some of you will know, the benefits of trade agreements are really not as obvious as they used to be for many people, and there's much more criticism nowadays in Europe about trade agreements. Many people and consumers and action groups and even political parties believe that trade agreements do not necessarily benefit or not necessarily good for the environment or for other consumer criteria. So there's a lot of discussion in Europe nowadays about trade agreements. Now, this agreement, as I mentioned before, has a lot of provisions on sustainability, so it should be better placed to weather these storms and to be actually approved and by national parliaments. But this is still not the case. It's currently under legal revision in the EU. It's being translated in all the EU languages, and then it will need to be approved by the European Parliament and Council of the European Union. And after that happens, the trade part, because as I mentioned, it's not only trade, it's also political and cooperation, but the trade part will then probably be applied provisionally. And hopefully that will be in 2022, but it may also be in 2023. After that, the global agreement will also be ratified by the national parliaments for definite and complete application. And Mexico's parliament, of course, will also have to ratify the agreement. But as I said, the discussions are more on the European side and not so much on the Mexican side. Now, if we go to practical implications of this agreement, we see that food and drinks are actually the sectors that will benefit, or is the sector that will benefit most from this agreement, more than any other sectors. Basically because a lot of the tariffs and import duties will be cut or eliminated. I'll give you some more detail on the next slides. And apart from these tariff cuts for example, pasta, chocolate, confectionery products, cheese, apples, canned peaches, most pork and poultry products, and a lot more, but these are the most important. And apart from these tariff cuts, there's also protection in this new agreement of some 340 European geographical indications. So I'll also give you some examples of those implications or these geographical indications in the next slides. As for the reduction of import duties, for virtually all food products for which there are currently import duties, those will be cut. For quite a few of them, they will be cut or actually eliminated. Now, this does not mean that that this will happen immediately. For some products, they will be so as soon as the agreement will enter into force, the import duties will be eliminated. For others, it will take a couple of years, and it can take up to 10 years for some products before before they will reach zero. So before the import duties will actually be eliminated in total. Here you see some important products on the slide for which import duties will go down to zero. These include practically all economically relevant poultry products. They have up to 100% of import duties nowadays, and it will take some 7 years before they will go down to zero under the new agreement. Cheese products, of course, very important for the Netherlands. Cheese has up to 45% of import duties now. They'll be eliminated. For blue cheese, they will be eliminated without any limit. For fresh and processed cheese, like grated cheese or powder, there'll be a limit of 5,000 tons after the 5th year. And for other cheeses, like most Dutch cheeses, there'll be a quota of 20,000 tons. So up to 20,000 tons will be able to enter Mexico with a 0% import duty. Then there's most pork products will have their import duties eliminated. Milk powder, and they currently have duties up to 50%, and under the new agreement, up to 50,000 tons will be able to enter Mexico duty-free. Apples, canned peaches, they will all go down to zero. Now, if you have a specific product which is not here on the list, or if you have any questions, please contact us and we can find out what the situation is for your specific products. And just as a clarification, even though these import duties will go down to zero for most products, it does not mean that the EU or Mexico can still have technical standards for products, consumer safety requirements, environmental protection requirements, and of course, animal and plant health. So for example, poultry products, to give one example, they may go down to 0, but the Netherlands is still not officially able to export poultry products to Mexico, because we first need to get an agreement with the Mexican government about the import requirements for poultry products. So import duties is one thing, and phytosanitary and sanitary standards are another. What I also mentioned, these geographical indications that will be protected, some 340 in total. Now, what are geographical indications? Here you see some examples. For example, Parma ham, Italian Prosecco, Scotch whiskey, and you also see that 3 geographical indications from the Netherlands that will be protected under this new agreement, and those are all 3 are cheeses: Edam Holland cheese, Gouda Holland cheese, and the Dutch goat cheese. So what does this protection mean? Basically, it means that you cannot sell those products under the same name in Mexico if they do not actually come from the Netherlands, and or from specific regions in the Netherlands. And even you cannot even, for example, sell Gouda Holland type or imitation, even if you put that word on the label. That's not permitted under the new agreement. Now, to finish up with some statistics, who will benefit, or what do we actually export nowadays from the EU to Mexico? Here in the graph, you see that more than a quarter of our exports to Mexico, our food exports, I should say, which in total are a little over 700 million euros in 2021. More than a quarter are alcoholic beverages, mostly wine and liquors, not so much from the Netherlands, as you will imagine. Now, import duties will be eliminated on those alcoholic beverages in the new agreement. The second category is animal and vegetable fats and oils, so mostly olive oil, actually also not from the Netherlands, as you will imagine. And in this category too, import duties will be eliminated. The third category is cereals, mostly barley and wheat. Also for this category, import duties will be eliminated. And then you see some lesser categories also in this graph, like preparations of cereals, flour, starch, or milk, for example, infant formula, dairy products, preparations of meat or fish. Now, which countries, and this is the next slide, are actually exporting these food products to Mexico? You see that Spain, of all the EU countries, I should say, has almost a third of these exports to Mexico. I'll imagine that there's a lot of wine and olive oil in this export from Spain to Mexico. France is in second place, and the Netherlands is actually in a good third place. So we're quite well positioned to benefit from this trade agreement. Now, what do we export as the Netherlands to Mexico in terms of food items that we see on the next slide? You see that the most important category is dairy products, and that's mostly cheese. Although there is a bit of a downward trend. It used to be some 50 million, and now it's a little less than 40. Maybe Dan has an idea on why this is happening. You see also other categories like infant formula, food preparations, and others, which hover around the 20-30 million euros per year. And then there's one category which is actually going up quite fast, and that's cocoa powder and chocolate. Mostly cocoa powder, actually, not so much chocolate as a final product, but mostly cocoa powder as an intermediate product, which is then used here in Mexico by the industry, for example, to make chocolate. So these are the most important categories that we export nowadays from Mexico to the EU, which will also be benefit from this new trade agreement. On the next slide, I have some links for more information if you want to dive into this a bit more for your specific products. I'll imagine that you get this slide, or that you get this presentation from from our colleagues at the Holland House, so you can click on these links. And also, if you want to reach out to us for a specific question, here's my email address or our email address, and we'll be glad to help you with any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. That was very, very interesting. I see that we have one question from our audience, from Janine Haag. She has a very specific question, and we will follow up with that one on a personal note, Janine, and also to put you in contact directly with Eric to look further into the requirements. The last presentation of today will be done by Florencia Cantu. She is the coordinator of agri-food and horticulture at Holland House, Mexico. She's been working in the past few months on the update on the sector study that we executed in order to identify opportunities for Dutch companies in Mexico's food industry. So the word is to Florencia to explain us what has changed due to COVID and all the implications. Florencia.
Yes, thank you, Karin, for the introduction, and thank you everybody for being today with us. As Karin mentioned, I'm responsible for the agri-food and horticulture sector at Holland House, Mexico. And yes, today we will speak about what happened in Mexico, the new trends and the market. So we will see an overview of Mexico. After that, we will speak a bit more about what happened in Mexico during COVID-19 and the new trends. I'll speak further about retail and food service and end my presentation explaining a bit more about Mexican official standard NOM 51. So if we go to the next slide, please. This is an overview of Mexico, a very quick one. Mexico is the 15th largest economy in the world and the second largest in Latin America with 130 million inhabitants. As you can see in the map, we wanted to include the size of Mexico within Europe, so you can realize the size of this country. And also we wanted to include the wealth distribution. In Mexico, 61% of the population is lower class, 37% is middle class, but only 2% of the 130 million inhabitants are from upper class. So now, something that could be very interesting for you on what Mexicans spend their money. So 51% of their expenditure, of their salary, it's made in food, beverages, and tobacco. So this is something really good for you. 28% is in transportation and communication, and just 21% in education and leisure. Of course, during 2020, the economy contracted 8%, but for 2022, it's estimated that food production will grow a half point, indicating a recovery, in food and beverage sector. So let's go to the next slide, please. So Mexico and COVID, a lot of things happen here, as I imagine all around the globe. So the pandemic not only affected the way that people relate to each other, but also the way we live, the way we work, how we study, but as well the way we buy and we choose products. So these are one of the most important trends that we have find here in Mexico. The first one, and I think it's one of the most important ones, is the use of e-commerce platforms for groceries and meals. So prior to the pandemic, Mexicans were not very used to platforms, and they didn't want to use it that much because they were a bit scared about buying products, mostly fruits and vegetables, because they were scared about the quality of these products. But then at the beginning of 2020, when the pandemic started, people did not want to get contagious. Also, there was a shortage of products. So people have to start working, have to start using these platforms. We have realized that during these 2 years, this sector has grown a lot. Proof of this is that purchases made online with home delivery have grown 41% compared to pre-pandemic times, which is a lot. So today, consumer can go out and do their groceries, but they have included as a part of their day-to-day buying online, So this is a very, very important trend. Also, Mexicans are more concerned with conscious consumer, as you can see here. This is that 3 out of 10 Mexicans are willing to pay higher price for products that are made by ethical and sustainable practices. Right now, sustainability is in the radar of consumers. So people is starting to select products, biodegradables or eco-friendly products. Also, it's very important to mention that during 2020, Mexico City government launched a new reform on law that prohibits single-use plastics. So this is really good and also helps to this trend. Also, Mexicans have shifted from compulsive to intentional consumption. So these trends has changed a lot. Now, Mexicans are not that interested on quantity, but more in quality of the products, you know? So the Mexicans are looking for exclusivity, are looking for unique products, are looking for experiences. So we are moving from mass production to handmade, including, of course, an appreciation of locally produced goods. So the next trend, this is a very interesting one, and I think that you will like it. May indulge in answer to the prolonged period of the restrictions. What this means is that the long period of the restriction has also given the consumers spending more money on indulgence. So here in Mexico, we have a culture of YOLO, you know, you only live once, so spend money on things that make you happy, you know, on things that make you feel good. So during the pandemic, all this happened. So even though Mexicans, of course, are more focused on healthy lifestyle, that is another trend as well. They want to buy this kind of products that make them feel good. So if we move forward with a next trend, that it's Mexicans are more focused on a healthy lifestyle. Of course, that it happened. I assume that this happened in all over the world. People become more interested on healthy food due to health restrictions. We were forced to stay at home, work from here, do all of our activities here. So during the pandemic, there was an increase of 4% of the consumption of these type of products. This trend is more linked to people with high or medium purchasing power. And by 2022, 80% of the consumers in Mexico will be more conscious about mental and physical self-care. So if you go to the last trend, this one as well, it's a very important one because people start enjoying home delivery. This is a trend that already started prior to the pandemic, but has increased a lot. Also, it's important to mention that the delivery industry has positioned itself as one of the most important players contributing to the economy of Mexico, you know? So right now, people was at home, have to work from there. So they start doing a lot of home cooking and using food delivery apps a lot. Please, can we go to the next slide? So we will speak about some food categories with the highest sign of growth. We can see, of course, plant-based product, organic, healthy, that we have already spoken about that, frozen and dairy. Next, please. So we will start with the plant-based products. This is a sector with an exponential growth here in Mexico. As you can see, 9% of the population is vegan, which is a lot if you consider that we are 130 million inhabitants. Follow that, we have 50% of flexitarians, 19% vegetarians, and 67% omnivores. So the new plant-based products have grown from 2019 to 2020 at 53%, which is a lot. Here you can see as well in the presentation a picture of one of the most important plant-based retailers here in Mexico. It's called Mr. Tofu. And this is a great example because they have grown in 7 years from 1 store to 24 all around the country. Also, I would like to mention some subcategories that are very important. Of course, all of them 100% plant-based are bakery, snacks, dairy substitutes, and of course, meat substitutes. Right now, most of the ingredients that people are looking for in these kind of products are from sources such as peas, beans, chickpeas, and lentils in all of the formulas. And as well, Mexican consumers are looking for taste, for texture, and nutritional contribution that feels similar to animal-based proteins. So something very important to mention, Mexico is about 10 years behind compared to the Netherlands, but we are growing a lot, as you can see here. So in the next sector is organic and healthy food. So here, the growth for the forecast period from 2019 to 2024 in organic food, it's more than 6%. Of course, it's a sector that is growing a lot as well. I would like to mention some categories with a major growth. The first one that I include there is organic baby food. This category is expected to witness a steady increase of the demand during the period of 2019 to 2024. So parents were at home, they have the children there, and they are looking for ready-to-eat products and healthy products for their children. So in the last year, most of the retailers have been looking for this type of products. So if you have these ones, this is the opportunity for you. Also groceries, this is a very wide variety, but all of them are very demanded here in Mexico. Also snacks like dips, for instance, hummus, guacamole, nuts, seeds, vegetables, olives. And then right now there's a new trend called superfoods. Here it's quite new, but this includes, for instance, almond milk, coconut, and another kind of seeds like chia and quinoa, which are very expensive actually, but are very important to mention as well. So this growing trend of brands have to innovate with the categories. So most of the biggest brands have include in their portfolio organic products as well. And then this is just for niche of consumers, but it's growing in the whole population here in Mexico. So the next, it's dairy, of course, it's an increasing steadily, but it's expected to grow by 1% in 2022. Mexico per capita consumption of cheese is 4 kilograms and consumption of milk, it's 115 liters per year. So the cheese import, it was 8% higher in 2021 than in 2020. And well, the Mexico import inputs for the dairy industry are mostly milk powder, casein, and dairy products. Here you can see a picture of a retailer called City Market. These are all Dutch cheese, but this sector, it's way bigger than this picture. I just wanted to see an example. Next, please. So the next one, it's frozen foods. Of course, frozen food here in Mexico, it's still half of the size of fresh, but the perception of the frozen foods had changed a lot here in Mexico. So now frozen presents better quality, more variety, and there are several premium options as frozen meat, as Dan mentioned previously. And today, frozen also emphasize on nutritional, health, and attributes and taste. So the Mexican frozen market is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 4% during 2021 to 2026. Here you can see some pictures from, say, a retailer called City Market. And this is something very interesting for you to see, because here you can not only see ice cream, but vegetables, fruits, of course, fish and chicken, but as well, I found a very interesting part where you can see waffles, gluten-free products, vegan products. So this part, it's very, very big right now in the supermarkets. Next, please. We will speak about retail. Here include one of the biggest one, more important ones here in Mexico. And as you can see, most of them have e-commerce platforms. So all of them have to adapt to a new normal. So they have to introduce e-commerce sites in order to increase their participation in the sector. Here in Mexico, hypermarkets are the most relevant format in the country, sorry. And some of them have this gourmet format. For instance, La Comer has City Market, where you can find all of these kind of products that I mentioned previously. So right now, some smaller retailers like Green Corner or Mr. Tofu are located mainly in large and medium cities, where usually they in the parts where upper income neighborhoods. So something that I would like to mention here, it's that Green Corner and Mr. Tofu are very new. I already mentioned what Mr. Tofu is, but Green Corner has a very interesting format because they sell everything organic, keto, vegan, but as well they have their own restaurants in every store. So if you go there, you can as well have your meal and everything will be organic. This is one on its kind. There's no other type of these supermarkets here in Mexico. And as well, I think it's very important for you to see the number of stores that there are here in Mexico. Of course, all of these include their formats. Next, please. So we'll speak about e-commerce. Sorry, I'm going very fast, but I want to try to finalize. So 90% of the e-commerce has a growth in 2020. It's the second market in Latin America with the highest turnover. We have 33.4 million users in delivery apps in 2022, and it's a sector that generates $200 million in 2021. So now the total volume of sales in the retail sector in Mexico by 2025, it's going to be 24%. So here you can see several apps. Some of them are more for retailers. In the case of Justo and Corner Shop are called e-groceries. This is a new trend here in Mexico. So this means that you can do all your shopping online and you will have your own shopper going to the stores and letting you know everything that you need. If there's any product that there's not in stock, they will call you and let you know. So it's a very personalized and it's very interesting. Most of the people is very happy with this type of app. And also Rappi is one of the apps that as well it's moving to this category. But as well we have Uber Eats, Didi Food, and Rappi as well, that they deliver mostly food. Uber Eats is one of the most, is the major app here in Mexico. And also it's very important to mention the market sales. Here Mercado Libre it's the major app. And the second position, it's Amazon. So right now, people have been used to these apps. Right now, we are free, we can go out and we can do everything that we want. However, we have included so much this type of shopping that we don't want to change it. Because here in Mexico, if you do your shopping, you can have everything the same day or even the next day. This is not only for food, but for most of the categories. So it's very interesting. And yeah, it's growing exponentially, of course. So it was very important to mention this part as well. So if we move to the next slide, please. We will speak a bit more about food service. Well, of course, the crisis impacted this sector, causing zero income with the closure of 120,000 restaurants. This is 20% of the industry and the losses of 400,000 jobs. So the damage was massive. However, government tried to implement different measures to mitigate the spread of the virus because it was very hard by that time. So some of the measures were sanitization, sanitary filters, social distance between tables, time restriction, maximum number of guests. So all of these restrictions, of course, did not help that much of the sector. However, some restaurants were closed, permanently closed, cafeterias and small restaurants. So now we were working at home. So most of the restaurants that used to be near to the offices area called fondas had to close. So yeah, it was not really good at all. But the good thing of all of these is that this trend has helped to the growth of dark kitchens. I will move forward with that a bit later, but this is a very new trend here in Mexico. It's very interesting. However, the food service, it's a $36 million value sector in 2020. It has an annual growth rate during 2021 to 2026 of more than 5%. And now that people can go out, feel confident about that, the dining reservation has have an estimated growth to more than 29%. And of course, sales in food service restaurant expected to grow more than 40%. So what about dark kitchens? Well, dark kitchens, it's a new trend here in Mexico, has emerged during the pandemic. And the main characteristic of this is that the food is prepared only for home delivery without the need of physical space. So this has helped a lot to restaurants and to people that want to sell their own food. So apps are working a lot with this kind of dark kitchens. Actually, right now in Mexico, there's a lot of places where you can rent space and they give you everything and you can prepare all your food, and the delivery apps already know where you are, so they can buy all the food there. It's a very interesting concept and it's growing a lot. It's some experts consider that this type of business model will continue to grow in the following years. Also, another trend are the new menus. So what happened? Restaurants have to evolve, have to move forward with new options. People is looking healthy food, vegan and keto, so they are changing their menus and improving that. Even though if there were no vegan restaurants, they are offering these new options to the consumers for the high demand, of course, of all of this. So we will move forward with the next slide, the last one. This is a Mexican official standard, NOM 51. This is a mandatory standard. It's a labeling for prepackaged food and non-alcoholic beverages. As you can see here, there's an example in an image of an example of how it looks. It came into force in October 2020. This was only for food and non-alcoholic beverages, but then in March of 2021 was modified for prepackaged products. And also, it prohibits the inclusion of images, visual games, or digital downloads. This is mostly for children food. And there are several results about this NOM, so I wanted to mention 3 of them. The first one is that it's too early to make comparative analysis by brand and evaluate changes in dietary habits. Then the second one is that it's quite different, but it's a psychological response of the consumer. It's not what promoters expected. And then there's another one, is that consumer with less purchasing power are more indifferent to labeling than consumer with more purchasing power. So there's no a final result. The Ministry of Health said that in 5 years after that came into force, we'll have a real result. But in the meantime, we will have to wait. However, this standard, it's mandatory here in Mexico. So all of the product that gets into Mexico have to have this labeling. So this is all for me. Thank you very much, everybody. If you have further questions, you can please put in the chat box. And well, Mexico is ready for more business. We would like to know if you are as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Florencia. It's very interesting. I think that you have studied a lot more, and there's also a lot more to say on this topic. We will be sharing with the participants of today the results of this update to the study. It's being published right now on our website and other channels, but we can also make them available by email, as well as the presentations of our speakers of today. Since we've already extended a little bit, I would like to quickly thank our speakers of today. First of all, Dan Reitsma, then Erik Plessier, and also Florencia Cantu for everything they've been sharing with us. I think there is no doubt that there are wonderful opportunities here in Mexico waiting for you to cash in on. And we as Holland House Mexico will be very happy to help you with that. I look very much forward to speaking to you in the future. And I'd like to thank you for your attention today. Have a good day and see you soon. Goodbye.